Africa is the next power. Westerners on how Africa is overcoming. Look, man, we spoke about this in our last video about how, you know what I'm saying, empires come up and fall down. You know what I'm saying? Is the US the next empire to fall down? You feel me? Is it the next? Comment down below y'all thoughts. Is Africa up next? Let's check this out, guys. Let's get right into it.
You look at the West and you think we are living the dream. But let me show you the truth with numbers. In Europe, the richest 10% own about 60% of everything. In the United States, the top 1% alone hold almost a third of all wealth. And the bottom half together, they own just 2%. Now look at Africa. The richest 1%, just 1 in 100, own about half of everything. In South Africa, the top 10% control more than 80% of the country's wealth. Do you see the pattern so far? It's not you against us. It's all of us beneath the same pyramid. Yes, there are differences. Here in the West, poverty is hidden behind clean streets and credit cards. People live in houses that belong to the banks, drive cars that belong to finance companies, and buy food on debt. I know it looks like comfort. It isn't, and it's actually control. In Africa, inequality is even more visible. The mansions of the few stand out against the struggles of the many. But the design is the same. A tiny elite holding everything while the majority carry the weight. We are actually more alike than you think. You are told that we are rich, but most of us are drowning in debt, stress, poison food, and illusions. And we are told you are poor, but your lands are rich, your spirit is strong, and still the same sharks feed on you. So let's be clear.
Very true. Hey, he's spitting, y'all.
I'm not
gonna hold y'all. He's spitting right now. He's spitting right now. Listen to my guy. He's spitting right now.
Or that Westerners have. The problem is that everywhere, the wealth of nations is captured by the few, while the many are told stories to keep them divided.
Let him cook. Let him cook.
You think we are your enemy? We were told you are ours. But the truth is actually simpler than that. We are all being lied to. And as long as we believe the lie, the pyramid stands.
And unlike many countries in the West, including Britain, Africa is not saddled with debt. The British debt is 80...
Africa has the economic capacity to what? What did it say? Africa has a capacity to become an economic powerhouse.
The West, including Britain.
Right, imagine if all the African countries came, like if the African continent came together as one country and all the countries were states like the United States, bro. It'd be, hey, trouble.
Saddled with debt. The British debt is 87% of the British GDP, while the African debt is only 9% of their GDP. All but 2 countries in Africa could pay off their debt within 1 year. So the potential is already there, and the growth is already beginning. Even now, Africa is the continent in the world with the fastest economic growth. The GDP per capita of sub-Saharan Africa is expected to rise by 800% from 2020 to 2050. Anyone who doubts that Africa can make quick economic progress like this should look at the economic history of the US. In 1977, the US economy was the same size as the African economy is today. And since then, the American economy has grown by a massive 18.419 trillion.
Hold on though. Because now we're comparing the US to a whole African continent. Are we talking about a specific country in Africa? Or are we talking about the whole continent of Africa? You feel me?
The US economy was the same size as the African economy is today. And since then, the American economy has grown by a massive $18.419 trillion. And with Africa having more natural resources than the US, its progress in the next 40 years could be even more spectacular. So
I don't know if that's a fair comparison, my guy. We comparing a country to a continent.
If you are someone here today who thinks that Africa will never catch up with the rest of the world, I want to say that you will be proved wrong. With its mammoth population, massive potential, and amazing stores of resources, Within your lifetime, Africa will become an economic superpower. Thank you.
Africa is the only reason why Western Europeans get to enjoy such a high quality of life, especially for France. They brag about being able to live well even though they don't have to work as hard as Americans, but they omit the fact that all that comfort they enjoy comes off of the back of African resources and labor. England, Portugal, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and France all made a massive scramble for Africa in the 1880s, and France by far still has their foot in their old colonial ways. And even though these African nations have declared their independence, France and a couple other countries are still exploiting them, and they have given nothing in return to these African nations. They have built very little in infrastructure and construction. They have given next to nothing compared to how much they have taken to support their ways. Out of the 8 African coups that have happened since 2020, 7 of them were from French colonies. The French do not know how to build, they do not know how to innovate, they do not know how to grow democracy in any part of the world, which is why for the past 60, 70 years, they have just had French puppets that were ruling these African countries that finally got sick of how they were being treated. China has only taken an interest in Africa for 30 or 40 years, yet they have built more industry and infrastructure than all.
China's going crazy out here, y'all. And what I'm a big fan of is these cars that I'm seeing. I'm not gonna hold you. These Chinese cars here in South Africa, bro, are nice. They are super nice. The interior, you know what I'm saying, the you know what I'm saying, the dash and all the amenities inside, bruh. I'm telling you, these Chinese cars is nice, bruh.
Of the other
Very
European
nice.
countries combined. So of course, the African nations are going to have a much more favorable disposition towards China since they are the ones who are actually building factories, roads, bridges, hospitals.
Hey, bro, I'm not gonna hold you. China's smart, bro. If China at this rate, I feel like China has an opportunity to just take over Africa, bro. Y'all might not. Hey, China trying to take over Africa, bro. They know that Africa is the future. They know Africa has plenty of resources. They start with South Africa. They're gonna get South Africa, and they're gonna move up from there. They're gonna try to take over Africa. Watch, Chinese people are smart, bro.
China is actually divesting a lot of their own resources to make this possible. You guys know how I feel about a lot of Chinese policy, but they did hit the nail on the mark when it comes to Africa. It is pretty clear that Russia's Wagner forces have had a lot to do with the coups that have taken place in Gabon, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And even though the Russians aren't trying to actually help anyone, I believe they are trying to foment chaos and destabilize a lot of positions in the West. This can be an overall good thing for Central Africa. Even though the Russians' goal is to create a lot of instability for the West, this instability can spread to a lot of other African countries, and that can actually hurt a lot of China's positions there. Make no mistake, despite what you're seeing in the media, the US will find a way to exploit whatever is happening in Africa. At first, they seemed that they were very pro taking down the Niger coup, and now they've kind of backed off and they said that they are going to respect the current government. No, a lot of these African nations don't have a favorable viewing of the United States. The US will always find a way to profit off of whatever instability is caused. If there is going to be a disruption in the energy supply, I will bet you that the US will make money selling its liquid natural gas and oil. If there is going to be widespread war, the US is going to make a lot of money selling its weapons. I would not put it past the United States interests to have their cake and eat it too. They may be happy about China building all of this infrastructure because that means the US doesn't have to. It means the US doesn't have to invest in anything to make Africa more prosperous and rich, but they can reap all of the benefits for when that actually happens. In my opinion, I think that every Western interest should be kicked out of every African country and then reintroduced as a potential trading partner among peers with equal standing, instead of these African nations having to deal with the West like guaranteed exploiters.
Africa has been kept poor deliberately for hundreds of years. And let me tell you what's going to happen. In the next 100 years, for the First and Second World War, the battlegrounds of capitalism and communism was Europe. The battleground of modern politics will be Africa. The West and the East will come here and they will compete here to have a say in what happens to Africa. And I'm totally against that. Africa needs to be its own voice, and that's why I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I won't sympathize to the left.
I agree with him, bro. I agree with him because now all you see is basically you see US and China fighting over Africa. The kind of like Africa is like, I don't know. And then you see countries in Africa falling on China and Russia, like, oh, help me, help, like you're with us, bruh. Like, Africa needs its own voice, bruh. Africa is its own, bruh. Like, it needs to get to a point where it shouldn't need China, it shouldn't need Russia, it shouldn't need you. It needs to get to that point. Once it gets to that point, then we could be happy. But it's still, bruh, it's still to a point is where it's like it's in between other countries fighting over the continent. You know what I'm saying? It's still that in between. China fighting over this and Russia and US, and it's just like they pulling it both ways.
To the east, and I won't sympathize to the west, even though I acknowledge the east as
somebody can get into in today's world. Okay, I'm gonna redefine the term industry.
Even though I think he was gonna say that the East, which is China, Russia, does have Africa's best interests. I think that's kind of where he was probably gonna get to compared to the US. We know we bullies, bro. And the US we bullies. We'll exploit you. We gonna take. You feel me? At least China, you know what I'm saying, is building, you feel me, investing in Africa. You know? But like the other guy said, US is just sitting back, allowing China, allowing these countries to use their resources, use their time and energy to invest and build these infrastructures to build up Africa. And then US will come in and reap the benefits. So it's like, bruh.
Africa. Here's the story. Follow me on this. 9 of the 20 fastest growing economies in the world are going to be in Africa in 2025. Everybody's overlooking it. Only 0.5% of the world's private equity and venture capital is going into Africa, despite the fact that it's going to be the only continent with a growing population. A marketplace is all about consumers and producers instead of people on the tail end of life that are draining money out of an economy. Africa has a vibrancy. The best industry somebody can get into in today's world. Okay, I'm going to redefine the term industry. Africa. Here's
Western media loves portraying Africa as a place
I
that's
agree with everything he said. Ever since I've been here, bro, I've seen it. I've seen all of it, bro. Like, this is the best place to invest in. Whether it be land, whether it be a business, you know what I'm saying? This is the best place to invest. If you somewhere in the US or even China, China's smart, bro. China is doing their thing. That's why I'm like, bro, they came here with their cars. They're building stuff, you know what I'm saying? They're investing. They are investing in South Africa. They smart, bro.
hopelessly impoverished and always prone to conflict. And while there are certainly issues, I believe that Africa is the future. Let me explain. The first thing you have to understand is just how many Africans there are. 30 years ago, there was roughly as many people living in Europe as there was in Africa. But now there are now 3 times as many Africans compared to Europe. In 20 years, there will actually be 4 times as many. What this means economically is that the average African only needs an economic output that's 1/4 of that of a European in order for the African economy to be larger than Europe. And I think this is super impressive, especially given the disgusting role that Europe has played in Africa through colonization and empire. It's beautiful to see Africa having the potential to overtake Europe. The second thing you also need to understand is for a long time period, it was really just the Western countries that were able to dominate the world economically, politically, and through empire. But now in the last 20 years, we've seen the rise of many economies such as China, India, Russia, Turkey, etc. And what this means is all these countries are competing against each other. And if an African state doesn't like the West, they can just kick them out and bring in a different country in. And if they don't like that country, they can kick them out and bring another country in. So unsurprisingly, for instance, we're actually seeing a number of African countries that are, cutting off relations with European powers and even evicting their military. And because of this, you have to understand that the third factor I want to talk about is we're now at a point where a lot of the fastest growing countries economically in the world are in Africa. According to the most recent figures for this year, 6 of the fastest growing economies are now in that continent.
Dang, I'm actually surprised when I see South Africa on this list. Ethiopia, Niger, Rwanda. Bro, y'all been telling me to go to Rwanda, bro. I've heard Rwanda is nice, bro. I need to check out Rwanda, bro.
Continent. And while I know there's certainly many issues in many other countries in Africa, it's very inspiring to see this happen. We saw this previously with Asia, and that continues to a partial degree with, of course, the rise of China, and we could be very soon seeing that also in Africa as well. But the fourth And I think the most important thing is while there's all these factors going on, nothing can be achieved without the will of the people. And certainly we're seeing in Africa a bunch of revolutions are happening that is leading to the kicking out of European imperialists and the collective will of African people. In Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, there have been revolutions where now the revolutionaries hold control. They are, for instance, creating factories, growth, economic opportunities for the common people, no longer just serving the foreign powers. And this is really what's going to take off Africa, is if that happens, then it's completely unstoppable. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Go check out some of my other stuff. I do a lot of stuff on African geography and politics, and I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks.
Future is African. By the end of this century, it is predicted that the only continent experiencing growth will be
Bro, is
Africa.
this AI?
13 of the 20 biggest cities
Why does this guy look AI, bruh?
in the world will be in Africa, and at least 1/3 of the global population will be African. There are a couple reasons for this. The first being, while that birth rates in the rest of the world are falling drastically, birth rates in most African countries are actually still quite high. Sub-Saharan Africa has one of the youngest populations in the world, with 70% of people under the age of 30. And having a young population brings a lot of opportunity.
Yo, there is a lot of youth. And here in SA, there is a lot of youth here, bro. There's a lot of young people here. A lot.
Has one of the youngest populations in the world, with 70% of people under the age of 30. And having a young population brings a lot of opportunities for economic growth and innovation if those opportunities can be recognized and utilized. And it just so happens that Sub-Saharan Africa is the 3rd fastest growing crypto market in the world, which I can make a whole nother video on. And the way that Africa will develop is through something known as the Flying East paradigm. The reason that China was able to develop so rapidly was because the US was outsourcing all of their manufacturing jobs there. They used this increase in capital to reinvest in their development, and now China is one of the world's
I want to go to China, y'all. Bro, look at China. Bro, we got to go to China.
use this increase in capital to reinvest in their development.
Bro, China look.
And now China is one of the world's global superpowers who is outsourcing all of their manufacturing to African countries, like Ethiopia, who have already started their industrial parks development program. There's so much to say on this topic, and I don't want to make the video too long, but if you found yourself at the end of this video and you don't already...
Shout out, man. Look, guys. I need to start popping some kids out soon. I know that's very random, but hey, I'm thinking about the future here in Africa. I need to plant my seeds here. You know what I'm saying? I need to have my little munchkins. You know what I'm saying? I feel like what we're talking about here it's going to take some time. It's going to take 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You know what I'm saying? It's going to take a long time, y'all, for it to really get to where we want to see it. So I think I need to start planting my seeds. So then my seeds can reap the benefits of the future of y'all get what I'm saying. Y'all get what I'm trying to say. Look, comment down below your thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed my reaction, my commentary. If you did, smash that like, guys. Sub to the channel if you're new. Stay tuned for next one, y'all. Peace.